Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Realise Business's Expert webinar. Firstly, thank you for joining us today. My name is Jacqueline, and I am the Marketing Manager at Realise Business. Realise Business is a leading social enterprise empowering people to successfully run a business. Through our webinars, we bring our advisors and members together to share their expert knowledge in the interest of helping each other to learn and grow to their highest potential. One of our Realise Business advisors, Sara Berry, a specialist marketing advisor who heads up her own agency, Marketing Sense, will present the webinar, Make Your Marketing Work today. Before I throw to Sara, I'm going to run through some quick housekeeping points. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box. You can bring it up on the right-hand side of the screen by pushing on the chat icon at the bottom of the screen or by pressing Alt-H. I will bring them up during the presentation at my discretion. Otherwise, we will have a full question time at the end of Sara's presentation. So now, without any further ado, I'd like to formally introduce our presenter, Sara Berry.
Jacqueline, thank you. Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, is it? I hope you're enjoying a sandwich with this webinar. So my name is Sara Berry. I have actually started in marketing a date that I don't even want to recall, but it was experience across all the disciplines of marketing, from retention to loyalty to acquisition, and have successfully owned and operated my own business, Marketing Sense, since 2012, so 7 years this year. And my superpower is helping business owners to find their superpower. So really, I like to work with small business owners to identify ways in which their business can cost effectively grow their brand and increase their relevance to the customer. So welcome, everybody. If you don't know, Realise Business is a not-for-profit established in 1989. We have worked with over 20,000 businesses, and our programs are funded by federal and state government to provide free and affordable services to businesses. So we will talk a bit more about this later, but the Business Connect program enables you to have 4 free hours with my good self. If you like to revisit the webinar today, we can actually tailor this whole process specifically to your business. And we also at Realise Business have a team of qualified business advisors, coaches and trainers, which if you head on over to our website, you'll be able to see all the different advisors and their various specialties. So Realise Business offers business advice, coaching, mentoring, connecting you with the business community, networking. We also have a business directory. And if you would like to become a member, I'm sure Jacqueline and the team will be able to assist you with membership. There are lots of advantages to joining the Realise Business membership, including speaking at events and accessing discounts. So I mentioned earlier, I have run successfully my own business for the last 7 years. The Business Connect program likes all of the business advisors to own and operate their own business, because what that means is we actually get it, right? We have our own small businesses and we understand the challenge of running a small business. So I invite you now to check out on my website, even if you Google Marketing Sense 7-Day Marketing Challenge, this challenge will come up. Subscribe to the challenge. It's an email a day for 7 days, and is actually based, this presentation is based on that challenge to some degree, but really is going to help you to develop your marketing mindset, and that's really what I'm about. Help you to learn how to build a stress-free, solid, repeatable and proven, I know this works because I've worked on it with my clients over the last 7 years, step-by-step marketing strategy. One of the things Jacqueline and I were talking about earlier in getting ready for this webinar is that sometimes the whole idea of having a marketing strategy isn't as sexy as some other things with marketing, like social media or content or SEO. But one thing I would say is that you really can't do any of those other things properly until you have the foundations in place. So that's what we're going to go through today. So the aim of the workshop is really to develop your marketing capability, to build your knowledge and skills, to generate a more awareness, demand and sales for your business. And who doesn't want more demand and sales for their business? So the key objectives really is to help you to create meaningful customer focus, target market and figure out your market positioning, how to position your business in a unique way, and if not a unique way, at least looking at a way where we can tailor your services specifically to a specific market, how to understand the value you bring to your customer and market that, and how to really engage and emotionally connect with your customer. So what is the marketing planning process? In the next slide, I'll take you through the diagram. So this is something that I have developed. I mean, I guess really it's kind of like my IP from over 30 years of working with both corporates and more recently in the last 10 or so years, small businesses. So it brings the best of all worlds together into a 6-step process, starting with the problem to be solved. So quite regularly, when I'm meeting with clients, this is the first question I'll often ask them, like, what is the one statement that explains the business issue and the behavior we want to affect? And then what are the actual metrics around that? So that would be something like, I want to get so many additional sales through at the value of this much by X amount of time. And normally, because these days, once upon a time, we used to set like 5-year goals and things like that. But nowadays, because we're operating in constantly changing, digitally disrupted environments, I like to set these goals quarterly, and that keeps it really tight. And we're able to really, really monitor what you're doing. So the second part of this is, if we think about the key thing that you want to do is get more sales, we need to understand the actual landscape in which you're operating to uncover the insights, to develop this strategy and solve this problem. So this is really about who really are your customers. And there's another slide that talks about that in more detail coming up. What is their decision-making process? One of the things we talk about is the rule of 7. So these days we know that people are looking at 7 different things within your business to help them make a decision around what it is that they want to do or a problem that they want to solve. So where are you in that decision-making process? And then things like what motivates their purchase. We know now that social selling has become a big part of influencing people and how they make a decision. So things like reviews, Google reviews. If you're in the restaurant industry, you know, reviews from online aggregators. And then looking at, once you understand the external features of your market, then looking internally at you and what your strengths and weaknesses are within your business, what makes you different, and then really understanding who your ideal client is. When we do sort of an unpacking of your strengths, usually what that means is that we're able to look at where you can leverage from your strengths to attract the ideal client. And then also, what's your competitive landscape? So many of you may know me as the transformation and disruption specialist. So I work on a lot of disrupted industry projects. And within that, one of the things that we're identifying is that the landscape that we're operating in is changing so much that it's actually really important to stay on top of that competitive landscape. There'll be others that you'll hear. There's this whole mantra about staying in your lane and some of those sorts of things, which is really important. Yes, we need to be really focused on what it is we're doing and our goals and those things, but it's also important to look outside of your lane as well to see what's going on around you. If I look at the professional services sector, for example, some of those who are staying in their lane rigidly are now finding themselves with no clients, because this is a sector that's been heavily disrupted. So just be mindful of what's going on, and that's what this information needed is all about. Then also looking at how you're going to reach your target audience. What platforms do you need to be on? Do you actually need to be on Instagram? Do you need to be on Facebook? Do you need to be on LinkedIn? In actual fact, when I work with businesses in a startup concept development phase, often we'll just have a landing page. So one of the things that I really like to do is, for me, this is about you as a business owner getting value and not spending money initially. So how do we, in your business, get value for your marketing dollar? So if a landing page will do, why build an entire website, for example? So where are you going to reach your target audience? In some cases, it may not even be in a digital aspect, and I've certainly come across that quite regularly with my clients. You know, they're better off actually setting up maybe a stall in a local supermarket, you know, like a Westfield or whatever. So where is your ideal customer, and how do we best reach them? And then this is the bit that I didn't mention earlier. I actually originally started my career in London advertising agencies and working with some of the original London ad men. And what I learned during that time was the real value in having a creative execution of what it is that you do. So the expression of your idea creatively in the marketplace is one way of really being heard above the noise. So how you express yourself creatively, what is your single-minded proposition, and how do we actually actively engage the customer is a really key component of this. It's sort of like looking at your tone of voice, what things that you say that are on brand and off brand. All of these things get worked out through each of these 6 processes. This is something that's difficult to talk about in a general context, and you can get real benefit from when we work through the 3 points before this to actually really unpack how you express your idea in an individual one-on-one coaching session. And then we look at your tactical plan, which is the actual execution of what it is that you want to do. So the problem that you've solved, you know, you want to get so many sales and whatever that may be. So how are we then going to go about and execute on that? What are the tactical elements that you'll use? You know, will there be email, newsletters? Are you going to look at doing some social media advertising, or will just some organic social media do? You know, maybe you want to create a brochure. I know that dealing with some clients that work in the government sector, they'll always say to me, you know, like it's quite, it's almost mandatory to have some kind of PDF or tangible brochure when you're looking at targeting government clients. So we develop the tactics based on all of those things that have gone before to really make sure that we're spending the marketing dollars, your investment, on making sure you're doing the right tactics. And then the next step is to actually assess the metrics. Assess anything unless you've determined what the problem is at step 1. And that is often what I find is the most common reality, is that most business owners don't actually determine what the measurable problem is at the very beginning, the key performance indicator. So there's no way that you can determine if you spent your money or your budget, your investment, your marketing dollars soundly and well. So understanding the effectiveness of your activities will then actually inform any future budget that you spend. So was there an increase in inquiries? Did you get, you know, 10,000 people come to your website? Well, 10,000 is probably a bit unrealistic. Did you get 1,000 additional traffic to your website? How many of those were you able to convert into a lead, and how many of those were then purchasing your product or service? Some of those sorts of things are metrics. Cost per lead, cost per acquisition, and customer lifetime value are very important things that you need to assess when you're investing any marketing dollars. If you head on over to the Marketing Sense blog, I actually have an entire worksheet that helps you to understand your cost per lead, your cost per acquisition, and your customer lifetime value. And those are 3 metrics that you really must understand at the head of any of this, really, so that you are getting good return on investment. So developing your marketing strategy. So as a business owner, who are you? What is your business? What do you do? Why do you do it? Some of the whys are more important these days because social selling has become such a large aspect of what we do. So sharing our why is becoming more important, but who you do it for is the most important thing. So what is marketing? Marketing actually is a business process. Aha, surprise. Yes, it is a business process. It's a process that you need to integrate within your business on a regular basis. It's not quite commonly what will happen is somebody will build the things. They'll build the product, the service, they'll get the team on, they'll create it all, the assets, and then go, oh, yeah, now we've got to market it. No. So the point of this webinar is to explain to you that this is absolutely a business process that is integrated within everything that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And it identifies, anticipates, and satisfies your clients' and customers' needs. Now more than ever, the customer is driving the decision-making process and really the future of products and services generally. The consumer is in control now more than ever. So the marketing process identifies, as I mentioned before, how to position your business in a unique way, the problems your business really solves for your client, how to really engage and emotionally connect with your client. And that's actually something I'm going to just take a little moment to expand on. In the process that I've mentioned earlier, the 6-step process, and I mentioned the creative cut through and the ability to communicate your message creatively, the creative platform. In order to really get success these days, when you've got such a short time span, 2 seconds for somebody to absorb some information before they've moved on to the next URL, you need to have that, oh, they get me moment. You want your client to immediately look at what your messaging is and kind of go, oh, these people know my problem. They understand me. They get me. Okay, so just remember, they get me. Think about that. Put your work and anything you create in terms of your copy through that process. And then looking at how to develop communication that is relevant, yes, but also timely and appealing. So we look at like a customer journey, and there's pieces of information about your business that are going to be more relevant and timely and appealing at certain stages. And how does that all map out? And that's a strategic overview. So the marketing process, really a good example of this to exemplify is, and we always turn to Apple, it's like, oh, Apple again, but I can't think of any better campaign, and that's the initial campaign for the Apple iPod, 1000 songs in your pocket. I'm actually a huge music fan. If any of you follow me on my business Instagram or Facebook, there's some reference to music. I still go to festivals and I love concerts, even though I'm an oldie. But one of the things that really resonated with me is because I remember my next door neighbours 19 years ago, their children had these little devices. And I remember going, oh, what is that? And there's, oh, it's an MP3 or an MP. And I just didn't understand. And it took actually Apple, and they really dominated from this product onwards the marketplace with just turning all of those features into one singular benefit, which is 1000 songs in your pocket. So these guys really nailed positioning in a unique way. They really understood the problem. Like, I knew that I couldn't be going around with my Sony Walkman Discman anymore, and these little things are looking great, but I was like, I don't understand, what do I do with this? 1000 songs in my pocket, right? Okay, I get that. And they knew how to really engage and emotionally connect, and really developed communication that was relevant, because all the other companies at the time were just banging on about all the technical side of the MP3. So many of you may remember this campaign, the silhouettes. I remember seeing this actually in London during, I think it was would have been the early no, the early 2000s. So by choosing to center their marketing campaign on the benefits of the iPod, giving the customer 1,000 songs in their pocket, as opposed to the feature of the product, which is 1 gigabyte of storage, they provided real value. So the marketing process identifies the real strengths and capabilities of your business, the creation of new services, and opportunities to create value in innovative and differentiated ways. So one of the things you need to do is strip this back to your core mission. So who are your clients? What does your business want to achieve? And what makes your business different? So who are your clients? You need to focus on the client that is essential to your business success. Okay, so often I'll meet with a client and I'll say, so who's your client? And the arms go up in the air and it's, oh, everybody is my client. No, everybody is not your client. If everybody was your client, you certainly wouldn't be able to put together a marketing campaign that was ever going to have any effect. If you believe that everybody is your client, then it may well be at least worthwhile looking at them in segments. And then look at the client's decision-making process. And then also understand how others might influence and impact your customers' decision-making process. So the thing with all of this is you need to be focused. Don't fritter away your resources. As small business owners, as business owners generally, we don't have the marketing dollars to fritter away. So you need to be really focused on who your ideal client is. So what does your business want to achieve? What products or services does your client look to you to provide currently? So what age are they? Where do they live? There's certainly a couple of things that you could start with. But really what we need to do nowadays is look at some of the psychographics. So that's some of the more emotional aspects of your client. Some of the things that I like to consider in terms of, and this in front of you now is actually part of a buyer persona template, which I take all of my clients through. It's in a worksheet format. That I like to do, that's actually not on this one, but is it within, sorry, it's saying internet connection is unstable. Okay, we're back on. One of the things that's actually not on this particular screenshot, but is as part of the exercise, is a day in the life of, and that's something that we now refer to as ethnography. Actually thinking about your client's day from the minute they rise to the minute they go to bed. What are they doing? What are some of their daily activities, and how might your product or service serve them better to help them in their daily challenges? And then some of the other little things around that are, one thing I always like to think about is, how would your client be? What would they do without you if you weren't around? That's also another really good question to consider, to really think about some of the actual real psychographics of your customer. And as I said, we spend more time in this on a one-on-one coaching session. So back to the core mission again. What makes your business different? Do you deliver a service or product that no other business delivers? Are you delivering your service in a different way, potentially? But I think probably the one most important thing here to consider is, what are you really good at? And I think that's one thing, like working in my own business, those first two are becoming harder and harder to really deliver on. But the what are you really good at is something that you can focus on and consider. So to unpack this, sorry, beg your pardon, what makes your business different? Do you really understand why your clients choose your business over another? And how do you differ from your competitors, are two other aspects. So to look at that in an overall context, we consider the value proposition statement. So this is another exercise that I have a worksheet on, which unpacks this in more detail. More recently, I've actually just been referring to this as a brand statement, because I think people actually understand that concept a bit better. So this is really about developing a brand statement It isn't just the product or service you agree to deliver to the customer. It's the key ingredients of your business that solve a problem that your competitors can't. So your value proposition or your brand statement is what's unique to you. It's what's strong about you and your business. Okay, so without it, people don't have a reason to work with you over somebody else, or to buy your product over somebody else's. Your value proposition goes deep into the problems you want to solve for people and what makes you the right person for the job. And usually I'll do this exercise in the context of a homepage for a website. I generally would like to see this as the key thing under a hero image. You know, a two-line brand statement should be the first thing that comes up on your homepage as a business owner, so that someone landing there goes, oh, okay, I understand completely what these guys do, and I know that I'm on the right page, I'm on the right place. So you really do this to understand how you deliver value to the market, and as you build your brand and interact with the market. One of the things I've talked about quite extensively here is the need to bring about clarity, okay? Setting goals with everything you do, being able to make quick snap business decisions and have a laser-like focus is really important. And in understanding your value and your brand value helps you to bring clarity to decisions about your pricing, where you're going to distribute your product or your service, your creative platform, your messaging, your marketing campaign design, your brand, and even looking at the people that you hire within your business. In some cases, if you're new, and even if you've been going for a while, about this before, it's not necessarily something you're going to be able to do quick snap decision, or I'll fill this in right away, here you go, and get it back to you in a few seconds. I think actually this is something that's worth pondering over. It's worth thinking about. This stuff is really important. It's key. So if it does take some time, that's fine. It's okay. It's better that you have a chance to ponder this aspect of your business, as it really is, I believe, critical. It's a key foundation to everything. And initially when I started off coaching, I would let people skip past this phase. And what I was finding after a little while is that, you know what, all roads lead back to Rome, and Rome is your brand statement. So you're not going to get out of it if you want to do this properly. If you want to execute on your marketing with a return on investment, you need to know your brand statement. It's much easier to focus on building something that people want, rather than what most of us do, and I was guilty of this when I first set up my business. You know, you make people want what you've created. What you really need to consider is how you're going to build your marketing into your product and service, not just add marketing on as an afterthought. And this is how you build an amazing value proposition brand statement for your client. So the other really important aspect that quite often gets skipped over as well is making a role for marketing within your organization. So some of us are going to be sole traders, so it's not necessarily going to be so relevant, but for those of us that have got a few people in our teams, or looking at hiring, or even if you outsource to freelancers, everybody in the organization is responsible for marketing, and as such are considered marketers. So right down to the person that answers the telephone, to your receptionist, whoever has face-to-face customer, or not even face-to-face, just an interaction with the customer, is responsible for marketing, because they contribute towards creating value to your client. Earlier I mentioned the rule of 7. You know, if someone has a bad experience talking to your receptionist who's just about to knock off, go to the pub, and doesn't want to have a chat and talk to this client that's finally managed to ring your office, and, you know, sort of doesn't give them the service that they're due, in terms of those 7 moments of truth with your brand or your business, it can have quite a negative effect. So everybody needs to be on board of what you're trying to achieve within your organization. So now you have an organisation that is focused on creating a culture around the customer and their needs. And I refer to this as having marketing within your DNA. You've worked out who your ideal customer is and how to really engage with them. You understand the real value you bring to your client. And most importantly, you now have a real laser sharp focus. So that wraps up the presentation for today. As I mentioned, this is really just to give you an overview of the step-by-step process that I work on with my clients in a one-on-one coaching session. I believe that hopefully this will have given you some really good food for thought and some insights into the process and how this should be part of your DNA as a small business owner. You can book a meeting with me. My details are up on the screen right now. One of the things you may not be aware of is that the Treasury's Business Connect program is a fully funded program. Your first 4 hours are free, and you can access a total of 34 hours subsidised by the Business Connect program. And just to give you a little bit of an idea about some of the things that you can achieve with your through and oops, what happened there? And unpacking some of those things one-on-one in an actual conversation, and looking at building your repeatable marketing planning process, setting your KPIs, understanding your main growth issues, and then getting to work through that process together. Taking it right through to the end. You can't necessarily do that in 4 hours to go through that whole process, but certainly go through each of those things and understand the relevance to you. Setting a goal, an achievable goal, and putting in place all of the tactics to achieve that goal with a return on investment. We can develop a brand strategy framework. I've mentioned the value proposition design or the brand statement, which was up on the screen earlier. We can work on that together and learn how to develop your brand and market positioning. I have a presentation pack, a deck that I'm happy to share, a brand strategy deck, which I can share with you in a one-on-one session as well. And we can also get into the nitty-gritty details of developing your value proposition and the problem that you solve and how your product or service is relevant. And I think that's about me. I'm run out of voice now. So back to you, Jacqueline. Does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Sara. Marketing is always an important topic and one we can all benefit from gaining a deeper understanding of. And I think you did an excellent job in your webinar today, so thank you. I'm just going to ask our audience to type in some questions now. So just take a moment to type into your chat box there, and we'll raise some questions with Sara. So I'll just give you a couple of minutes to do that. And while we're doing that, I just wanted to have a quick mention of some upcoming events and webinars that we have. So this month is Small Business Month. I'm sure you've seen it advertised. We have an event that Realise Business will be hosting on the 30th of October at the Sydney Startup Hub. And it's an all-day event where you can learn to pitch your business and create your own pitch deck. The second half of the day, you'll get a chance to pitch your business to a panel of experts and potentially win one of two $2,500 prizes. So it's definitely worth your time if you'd like to learn how to pitch. We will send you our thank you email at the close of this session, or if tomorrow morning at the latest. And I'll have a link for this session again on the 30th of October. So you can go through and register if you'd like. Otherwise, you can head to our website whenever you wish, and that is www.realise.business. We've also got some webinars coming up. We've got 3 more to close us out to the end of the year. So the first one's on the 12th of November, Attracting and Selecting the Right People for Your Business. That's hosted by Joe Attard. Then on the 4th of December, the Productivity Ninja, Practical Tools to Boost Your Productivity. And the 10th of December, Catherine Blizzard, who is an expert on leasing and one of our business advisors, is going to host a webinar on leasing and tell you everything that you need to know. And that's really worth your while. If you're not already leasing a premises, but you potentially will be in the future, you would like to hear from Catherine on this, because she is a wealth of knowledge. So we bring in experts for the webinars like Sara, and they're not only experts in their field, but they're experts in small business. So it's really worth your while to give us half an hour of your time and listen to all of these topics, because they're looking at things from your perspective and they understand your market, and that's why we choose and engage these people to run webinars. So we'll send you links to all of these on the thank you email, which will also include a link of this recording. So we've got some questions here now, but I might just kick off into the first question, which came from Haytham during the presentation, Sara, and it is, how do we know the decision-making process that our target customers are following? So how do we know what they're thinking?
Well, to some degree, initially, you're going to have to make some assumptions just to start to build out a framework. Actually, I have actually got a slide on this, which if you book in a coaching session, or I can organise to have shared with you. The stages of the process. Now, each of these may be different depending on your actual business, but starting from actual awareness, through the discovery phase, through to actually looking at purchasing with you. So once you've got that actual process mapped out, it's rather than looking at it as this whole big, oh my goodness, how am I going to understand any of this? Look at each phase. Now, of course, if you do have a website and you do have Google Analytics and you have your social media set up, and you maybe you have a Facebook pixel installed on your website, and you've looked at previously having and unpacking your digital customer journey, you can glean a lot of insights from that in your Google Analytics. So there'll be things in there like customer acquisition, there'll be things like bounce rate, which is the amount of time someone's spent on your site. So from those things on your Google Analytics, assuming that you've got them, you're able to actually then look at some of those to determine how people are coming in, where they're coming from, and where they're dropping off, would indicate to you, okay, so that piece of content was good, that drove them to the site, but they're not staying. I need to have a look at what issues may be happening here. That's just obviously without knowing your specific details. That's kind of like a broad way of looking at some things. Of course, you've got qualitative and quantitative research, which again is something that you would unpick at each phase of that journey. So understanding when they're at the awareness phase, for example, you would look at your search engine optimization. If they are Googling a specific product, say, for example, pink widgets in Cogra, and they put in pink widgets Cogra, and your business doesn't come up, then obviously then you've kind of got an awareness issue. They're not even finding you. So there's a whole raft of ideas, strategy and tactics that I could come up with, but hopefully that answers your question to some extent.
Thank you, Sara. Do we have any more questions? I just want to encourage you to type in any questions you might have in the chat box at the bottom right-hand side of your screen. I actually have a question for you, Sara. This is one that we receive a lot as well. In terms of engagement, how do you, if someone was to ask you how to get better engagement through their Facebook page or any of their social media pages, what would you recommend as a start?
Okay, so Facebook, what a monster Facebook. I regularly test this even in my own business, so I'm really across how difficult getting engagement is right now. Facebook and Instagram are rapidly becoming pay-to-play platforms. So I think there's a couple of things to talk about here. One is the organic aspect, and two is the using Facebook as an actual advertising platform and assigning some dollars to that. So I think even having, posting, creating a digital strategy or a social media strategy within your business is really important because of the 7 touch points, the rule of 7 that I referred to earlier, which is that someone will be engaging with your product across your website, your social media, and various other aspects to have to get some understanding of who you are as a business and some of those sorts of things, especially millennials. They're all over this purposeful businesses, so you know they're going to be wanting to unpack some of those sorts of things about who you are and why you do what you do potentially. So your social media is a really good place to share some of those things. Again, I try to practice what I preach, so even my own social media, I'm often sort of sharing the social side of me. I mentioned earlier that I talk about festivals or music or some of those sorts of things, but I also talk about my skill set, and I look at that as there's the, you know, like the purposeful, and there's sort of some main things that you kind of need to look at in your social strategy, but the most important thing that it is social, but also be aware that even if you're not getting engagement, that people are going to be looking at your social media. I know I do it. If I'm looking at purchasing something, my daughter finds something online she wants to go and buy something from, I'll always go and have a look at their Instagram and their Facebook, have a look at the quality of the product, see what kind of business they are, have they got reliable shipping. So from that perspective, engagement doesn't matter. There's the presence digitally. How to get good engagement if you're not going to pay anymore is not that easy, as I mentioned. But I think the most important thing to remember is that you need to create a cafe, not a museum. So make sure that you're having meaningful interactions with people. I have found that videos work really well. Again, that algorithm is changing. At one point, Mark Zuckerberg had decided that because he was trying to combat YouTube, that, you know, he would favor the algorithm towards videos. I've noticed that's changing again now, but I think the most important thing is to be personable and relatable. And of course, the other way to get engagement on Facebook is if you've got a particularly good post that people have responded to organically, think about maybe putting a bit of ad spend behind it and sharing it so that you might get a little bit more engagement. But that isn't necessarily always going to lead to a sale. So I think there's 2 aspects of this. Engagement is one thing, looking at your your social media in terms of having organic engagement and being a presence for people to look at is one thing. But if you're looking at actually putting some spend behind your social media, have a strategy. And I think that's a whole other conversation, Jacqueline, so I'll stop there.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That's an excellent answer though, Sara. We've got a question here from Renata, and she wanted to know how many business advice sessions would you recommend it would take for someone to gain confidence or more confidence in their marketing strategy?
Oh gosh, how long's a piece of string? I mean, I guess it depends on the individual and how they currently feel. I mean, really defining confidence. If we think about building capability, the way that I work, Renata, is hopefully you've already got that impression from me. I have got, yes, 30 years experience, but one thing is, for me, is I'm incredibly generous and I like to share all of that. So I generally don't hold anything back. So I guess in terms of building your capability, which in turn builds your confidence, I'm here. I think most people that I have worked with, I'm not sure if there's anybody on there on that webinar today, Jacqueline, but I am really all about backing you. This isn't about me, this is about you building your capability, building your business and building your success on your terms. So some clients that I've worked with, so it's coming up, internet connection unstable, so I'll just wait for that to go. Okay, good. I have had some clients, obviously I've been coaching for quite some time. If I talk about it in the context of the Realise Business Connect program, which is relevant here, you do have 34 hours, which is subsidized. You have 4 hours free and then up to 34 in total, which is massively subsidized. Each hour is $49 each, which is very generous subsidy. I do have some clients that I've worked with on initially the free 4 hours, and then I meet with them fortnightly for an hour or two, depending on their needs. And there's most of them usually after that 34 hours that have grown their own wings and can fly all by themselves, and they'll check in with me occasionally if they've got specific things around hiring staff or some of those types of things. So look, I mean, it really is a how long is a piece of string type of question, because it does very much come back to the individual. But remember, you've got that time on behalf of the Business Connect program, so you know, make the most of it. But certainly if you can only do the 4 free hours, as long as we're really focused in the first 15 minutes of kind of working out what it is you want to achieve and how you want to build confidence, I'll do everything I can to help you.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Sara. We've got a couple of questions from Bridget as well. So, what are the things clients look for in making decisions?
So what are the things
that clients are looking for when making decisions, I guess purchasing decisions?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so maybe if I had a bit of an understanding on the specifics of that, but in terms of making a decision, I guess, I mean, think about it in your own context. Bridget, was it Jacqueline?
Yeah, so she's just elaborated a bit further. So how do others influence the client's decision-making process?
Okay, so if I talk about that in a corporate sense, okay, so if we're talking about a small purchase, and this is where it very much depends. So if we're talking about, say, for example, just a couple of weeks ago, on Facebook, and they've got like the little bits that stick out at the end of on your heel with a smiley face on, and I couldn't go past them, and they were coming from America, and by the time they were shipped, I think it was a whole $19 that this was going to cost me. So in that context, you know, the influence is going to be very small. To be honest with you, I looked at the website, so then we're looking at that sort of the rule of 7.
Yeah, sorry, that's actually what Bridget was looking for, Sara, the rule of 7.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So the rule of 7.
That important out of my question, so I apologize.
Yeah, okay, so the rule of 7, actually, Jacqueline, we do have something that I wrote on our website. So I think maybe we could put that in if you're sharing anything, I'll find the link. But also if you Google rule of 7, like I said, we wrote about this probably about 2 or 3 years ago now, but it's all of the different aspects that people will go on. And usually this is to do with that aspect of knowing you, liking you, and trusting you. So one thing that's really, really interesting about the digital age is trust is at its all-time lowest, right? I think because there's been a lot of shark behavior, a lot of kind of untruths in relation to what's achievable and what's not achievable, what the product is, and then it ends up being something else. So as I said, trust is at an all-time low. So this whole rule of 7 is becoming more and more important than ever. So in this sock purchase, because it's such a small purchase, I may go and have a look at the website, and I probably go and have a look at some of the reviews to make sure that these socks, you know, aren't going to come with holes in them, or, you know, in some cases made in Bangladesh, or some of those sorts of things. For a larger purchase, so if you're looking at, and I mentioned earlier, if you're looking at working with government, which a lot of my clients that I work with are interested in building relationships with government, or even with a large corporate, you have a lot of decision makers and what we sometimes refer to as gatekeepers. So you may initially make contact with someone's executive assistant, or their secretary, or their VA, or something like that, their virtual assistant, that is. And then what are you going to do? How are you going to influence them to make sure that you can get your product or service? You know, LinkedIn is quite valuable if you've got a product or service in this area. So you can look at trying to connect with somebody, following them on LinkedIn, having an understanding perhaps of some of the issues they may have. Again, it's, you know, it's kind of needs to be unpacked on an individual basis, but I don't know, does that help?
Yeah, I think you answered that well, Sara. I hope that we answered your question, Bridget. We've got another message coming through. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, Bridget says yes. So I think that, do we have any final questions? I think we're probably, we're getting close to the close of this session anyway. So just if you've got any questions, please go ahead and type them in now. Sarah, is there anything else you'd like to add before we finish up this morning?
Did you have any other questions? You said that there was a couple of other questions that you got beforehand. There was someone that couldn't make it. Was there one about there was one about getting into them. Oh, that's right. There was one about getting into the marketing mindset. So I think that was actually going back to something that somebody else asked earlier. You mentioned to me, Jacqueline, someone asked about how to get into the marketing mindset, which is kind of like really what I'm asking everyone to do that's turned up today. So I think maybe what's happened, I mentioned earlier, this whole kind of thing around trust being eroded. You know, there may have been, I hear from a lot of businesses that, you know, I've spent when I was presenting workshops a couple of years ago, you know, I'd have at least 3 people in my workshops where people would say, you know, I've just spent $1,000 on Facebook and I got nothing, or I've spent $2,000 on AdWords and it didn't get me anywhere. I may as well have basically built a bonfire with my money and set fire to it. And I think what's happened with the digital marketing in its early phases, with Facebook being free, everyone has kind of lapsed into this idea that marketing is magical. Like, I think it's been sold as being this kind of magical thing that, you know, I just sprinkle a little bit of money onto Facebook and I'm going to get all of these sales. And I think the reality is, and what I'm hearing and what I've been hearing for the last few years, is a lot of kind of disappointment around some of the return on investments for some things, some tactics that business owners have taken on. And I think this is because it's the mindset around marketing isn't necessarily correct. So hopefully the presentation today has shown you that there are logical steps and they're repeatable steps that you need to execute on, and that marketing isn't magical. It's a business process. So there's no fairy dust. And one of the things I would always say, and a bit of a mantra of mine, is you and how to do it. Now, how much you want to take on yourself and execute yourself, that obviously depends on where you are in your business and those things, but you still, as a business owner, need to have an understanding of what it is, and that it's really marketing that drives customers to your business. So remember this and focus on this, and then continuously, and the emphasis on the word continuously, be thinking about shifting and changing how you best serve and help them. And you know, this sort of constant reviewing and getting stepping into your customer's shoes will enable you to steadily sort of change your marketing mindset.
Excellent. And thank you, Sara. And just quickly, just before we finish, I did see this come through before from Renata, so I apologize, Renata. Renata wanted to know the link for your web page that you mentioned. We'll also put this on the thank you email, but if you could just say that now as well, Sara.
Marketing Sense for the challenge, the 7-day challenge.
Yes.
Okay, so I think this, here we go. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So actually, I do work, again, I try and practice what I preach. I'm in the trenches every day, even on the weekends. I love what I do. I believe really strongly in marketing planning. And as I was saying earlier, it's not the sexiest of things, you know, people don't always want to listen about the marketing thing, but I believe in it so strongly that I created this, and this is a free resource. And I do all my own work on my search engine optimization. So even if you put in right now, Marketing Sense marketing challenge, that should come up for you anyway. Because I have made sure that it works from an SEO perspective.
Excellent. Thanks, Sara. And this webinar is actually being recorded, so we will send you the link to the recording. So if you wanted to recommend for anyone else to view the webinar, you can send them to that link as well. So thanks for that question, Renata. So I'd really like to thank everyone for joining us today. We really appreciate you being here. It was an excellent presentation from Sara, and I hope that we all gain some insight from that. I will be sending you an email, if not this afternoon, then tomorrow, and that will have contact details for Sara, as well as the links to all the other websites and events that we have coming up for Small Business Month and for the end of the year. So I just want to remind you too that webinars are actually a membership exclusive, but at the moment we are making them available to everyone for the rest of the year. So even if you're not a member with Realise Business, you're able to log on and gain some insight from our experts. So thank you all for joining us in the webinar today, and I look forward to seeing you all online at our next expert webinar. Thank you, Sara.
Thank you,
and
everyone.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us. We'll be in touch with the link and all the details of our event shortly.